Welcome back, Red Spotter. Let's review in the Red Spotlight Podcast. I'm your host, Alexis J. Soto, joined by Peter Martinez on this, the 26th week of the coronavirus pandemic, as well as, here on the podcast where we discuss movie news, reviews, and all of the things concerning movies, and sometimes, considering the climate, a lot of politics, it seems like. But being the case, here we are. We're still alive, so there's something. I will say that at the moment, at the recording of this podcast, we'll see however long this lasts, right? But at the moment, I am generally in a good mood, which is kind of counter to just about every story we're discussing today. And we'll begin with our usual COVID tracker. Last week we recorded, it was 178,000 dead. We are now at 184,000 dead from COVID-19. Here in America, our congratulations to President Donald Trump for delivering that for us. We're definitely number one there. Peter?
Yes.
How was your mood today?
I'm the Joker.
What, you're an idea?
It's, we live in a society. For now.
I guess I have a specific question to ask you.
Yes.
In regards to where we are in this particular moment. We're in the first week of September, the year 2020, here in America. As far as the pandemic is concerned, given everything that we've seen transpire in the last week between the National Convention of the Republicans, the Jacob Blake incident that led to the reignition of Black Lives Matter protests all around the country, Trump supporters coming into Portland and making a scene, and someone unfortunately being killed in an altercation, as well as California's major decision to throw out the stages plan and reopen the economy in a color-coded fashion that immediately includes reopening barbershops and salons, which they've been placing pressure on the governor to do so for weeks. My general question, all of that in mind, and I feel it's a rather important question to ask, is at what point are we right now with the coronavirus, and how are we dealing with it? Because from my perspective, it seems as if the last couple of people who cared have given up.
I maintain what I've maintained for a while now is COVID will not be properly addressed until we have a new president. Because from the very beginning, our current people in charge of this country went from denying it to playing it down to denying aid to trying to test as little as possible to keep the numbers down, immediately into everyone's going to get it anyway, we need to just open up the economy. Like there was never an attempt to give a shit or to even try. Just immediately from it doesn't exist to immediately into, okay, it does exist, but who cares? Yeah, like just that leap. And then for the special crazies, it's not real. Yeah, that's nice. So yeah, states can only do so much, especially when a lot of states are run by idiots. So the country as a whole, there's no leadership. So until we get new leadership, we're just going to keep fumbling along.
That's a nice, short, sweet answer, and pretty much is 100% accurate. And I feel you and I are in complete agreement when, at least what I'm about to say, and that is whatever progress appears to be made in terms of people looking up and noticing places that are back up and running, I would advise people to, even though they're not going to listen, because they never do, to expect that everything is going to end up closing again, because as we keep saying almost every single week, we're on an endless cycle of literally everything opening up, and then a few weeks later, they're closed again. So while a lot of places, and particularly for our state here in California, are doing better than we were about a month ago, that same pattern happened the month before, or at least 2 months before. So I see no reason to think as if, I see no reason to believe any of this is actually any of the supposed progress is being made.
Well, it's not only that, like, we're gonna hit flu season again. And at that point, it could not only opening up, but hitting flu season again, that's prime coronavirus time for it to get worse, spread more. So yeah, I the reason why you see so many the president conservatives pushing this idea of like, oh, herd immunity, it's because they don't care. They have no response. They think they can just say, well, everyone will get it and then everything will be okay. Everyone getting it means like 2 million people dead. But again, like, they don't care, so they're okay with it. There's been no evidence that herd immunity is even possible. And even then, when the downside is 2 million and you can avoid that, why not just avoid it? This reminds me of when the talking point was like, oh, it's okay. In the summer, it'll just disappear. Like it never existed, coronavirus. And,
we're in September.
Yeah, we're in September. Like, this idea that it was just going to disappear with the summer, it was a possible hope that might happen, but there was no hard scientific evidence that for sure.
Also, the summer happened, and guess what happened? 100,000 people died.
Yeah, obviously. But that's my point. People, like, they don't care, so they're like, no, it's okay. The summer come, it'll be over, da-da-da-da. And then, like, oh, look, it didn't happen. And their answer to that, well, okay, fine, herd immunity, The point is, we just need to get back to work. And by we, they mean you. And you want to know why, like, they're not providing you any aid. The reason they're not providing you any aid is because they know you can't survive without working, so they want you to work. So if they don't provide you with aid, they're forcing you to go work, and maybe you'll clamor like, hey, I need to get back to my job. So it's all very, for lack of a better word, evil. And yeah, like, the people in charge they just don't care. They don't care. They're not gonna deal with it. They're not gonna fix it. So yeah. Let
me remind you. So we're coming up on Labor Day weekend, and from what I'm aware of, every single holiday we've had since Corona has been a disaster. Almost every single holiday, we already know the images we're gonna see: parties, beach parties, pool parties, clubbing. And the cases will spike yet again. As soon as places are given the green light, cases will spike yet again. And we have every reason to believe, to kind of co-opt Kimberly Guilfoyle's speech, the worst is yet to come. Well, from Corona's perspective, the best is yet to come. It's going to be a disaster. And my fear is that there is this sense that everything is slowly beginning to turn a corner when it clearly isn't. And that's going to end in complete disaster. That's why I feel we're seeing projections that have as many as 300,000 Americans dying before the end of 2020. Is because not only is the government and the people in power continuing to play fast and loose with your lives, but flu season is coming, and that's going to make things just so much worse. And then look what also happens in the fall. We have Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and God knows what that's going to look like when we know how people are going to behave. We could see entire families be extinguished by this. This isn't a joke. Get ready for what's to come. This isn't fun. I also want to let people know about what we're discussing today. So we have to address the elephant in the room. We have a tragic passing in Chadwick Boseman. We'll discuss that right at the top. We want to talk about Jacob Blake and the Black Lives Matter protests. We'll discuss what we saw this week, which includes the RNC. And then in the world of film, we have, for the first time in months, a legitimate box office update. New Mutants open in North America here in the States. Tenet open internationally. It seems as if people are braving the storm and going out there because it did make some serious money, a lot more than what people were considering. Christopher Nolan has made some more questionable and controversial comments when it comes to his movie. We'll discuss Mulan, and we'll preview how we think it's going to go on Disney Plus, as well as our own personal arrangements for us seeing Mulan. We will cover Mulan because the powers that be have made it available to where we can watch it without risking ourselves in a movie theater. So you see, that does make a difference. And AMC getting into trouble again, trying to hide the fact that they lied about basically providing these brand new ventilators that would recycle the air in their theaters. Did I mention people went out to the movies this weekend and they made a lot of money? All right. So that is Red Spotlight number 263. So let's address this at the top, Peter. From my perspective, when I came across the news that Chadwick Boseman had passed, I couldn't believe it. I thought to myself, this had to be a joke. In fact, I was actually recording Fantasy Fair podcast with Alexis Moreno and Kyle Lira, and we were all just completely stunned. We couldn't talk for a couple of minutes there to collect ourselves. This passing is quite painful for a number of reasons. It's not just, I think most importantly, you can tell he was a genuinely good person, and that was just sad. He was a great actor. One whose career was tragically cut short. And it was so sudden because literally next to no one knew what he was fighting. Especially these last 4 years. And from what's come to light from statements from everyone from his friends and the cast and crew to Kevin Feige to Ryan Coogler, no one really knew. No one really knew what he was fighting with. And to think that a lot of movies these last 4 years he was able to make, be in, work at, all the press, all the premieres, as the statement said from his Twitter account, in between surgeries for colon cancer. It's very heartbreaking, and of course, it's not lost on us what an icon he was to the African American community, but to everybody in general, to kids everywhere as Black Panther. It's an extraordinary. It's a heavy loss for people in general. And we lost an actor who I really felt his best work was yet to come. Even he gave us a lot of good work, with what time he was given here. So it definitely shook me.
He was an extraordinary actor. Yeah, This one hit me. It did. There's very few. I don't mean to sound like cold when I say this, but there's very few celebrity deaths that personally affect me.
Do you, for the sake of interest, are there some that stick out to mind in the last few years that have affected you?
Yes. Anton Yelchin.
Oh, that was messed up. What happened to him?
Yeah.
That was so messed up.
And of course,
Carrie Fisher?
Carrie Fisher, yeah. That one, yeah. Those two just off the top of my head. I know for a fact when the second I found out the news, where it's just like that drop in your stomach, like, oh.
Yeah.
I know for those two. I can't really think of any others off the top of my head. But those two for sure. Definitely moved me emotionally. And now this one as well. I would say Chadwick Boseman. And it's one of those things where you don't expect it at all.
Nope.
So a lot of it might just be just how surprising it is and the way it throws you off guard in that way. But another half is just like, it's just another sort of punch in the face to let you know, like, oh, life isn't fair.
Yeah.
The universe isn't, it's not a movie where the good guys always win and the bad guys get their comeuppance and da-da-da-da-da. There are some genuinely good people who go through terrible things and die young, and there are awful people who live long and happy lives. And it's just that way sometimes. And it's sort of it brings you back to reality in a really shitty way, I would say. Yeah. And that's what Chadwick's passing really did, because that's the thing, he was a good person.
Yeah.
Like the definition of a good person. Like, he was very obviously very hardworking. There's not a single bad story that anyone who's ever interacted or worked with him can come up with. All of them are really positive. He seemed like really mellow and cool and caring. His entire career, he cared about the way in which people that looked like him were represented on either the small screen or the big screen.
There was a story I read that he was fired off a TV show one time because he brought up the fact that the character he was playing was speaking to a lot of stereotypes.
And you know who took over that character?
Who?
What's his name? Killmonger.
Michael B. Jordan?
Yeah. Oh man, how old were they? 17? I don't know, they were very young. But apparently he was instrumental in actually changing the way that character. He didn't get the role, but they changed the character anyway. But you can tell that was really his goal with his career. Yeah. You look at every role he took. It really was about uplifting the voices of people in the past and in the past that have looked like him, and hopefully giving a spotlight so that young kids that look like him could have that space in their future.
He played a lot of heroes.
Yeah,
he himself was a hero. And I actually want to bring up this tweet that I thought captured it perfectly, what you're talking about. This is from Eric Michael Garcia. He said, Chadwick Boseman's filmography was defined by playing black heroes. He played Jackie Robinson, James Brown, and Thurgood Marshall, which showed the best of what black men have done in art, sports, and politics. Then, by playing Black Panther, he showed the best of black imagination.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of where I've talked about this before, despite how much, me and you, we love movies. I mean, that's the whole reason we're here doing this. Movies really don't matter. And what I mean by that is, like, first of all, he's a fantastic actor, but just through his entire filmography, at the end of the day, how much I like or maybe dislike any film he's made just doesn't matter in comparison to what it means, on a larger societal level. Like,
right.
And this is what I was talking about with Black Panther. Like, we can go back and forth on a personal level how much we like or dislike Black Panther, but it just means literally nothing when you put it next to what it meant for the black community in this country, and what it meant for a change in film, to be able to prove that, a massive black cast could be such a moneymaker in the movie industry, to show kids, young black kids, a truly black hero, right in the heart of Africa, Wakanda. Again, it's imagination, but that's when you look at a lot of science fiction and a lot of that imaginative stuff. It's all about imagining the best of what we can be,
Yes.
And that's what Black Panther did for so many people. And just that sort of, and also tying that to an ancestry that was stolen from so many people that live in this country. And to do it in the biggest freaking movie of, 2018. Maybe it was the second, I don't know. But it was huge. That means so much more than whether, I don't know, the film itself. And I think a better way to put it is, if your first thoughts were like, when you heard the news, it's like, oh no, but I'm not going to get my Black Panther 2 now. Like, that's you're part of the problem, you know what I mean? It's sort of like when the Fox deal went through, and people were like, yay, X-Men and Fantastic Four are going to be the MCU, and it's like, maybe your first thoughts should be for the thousands of jobs that are going to be lost. That's kind of a bigger deal that we should maybe worry about, but it's the same thing here. Like, movies are great, but movies are an extension of human beings, the human experience. And
I mean, I think I speak for both you and I when I say, if it weren't for the bits and pieces of humanity that are sprinkled throughout cinema, and if it weren't for how cinema itself can help move forward a society or reflect society for what it really is, I'm not sure we would be as passionate about it as we are to even have a podcast like this. I mean, it's a lot of fun to discuss, obviously, but so often the point should be, reiterated, as you say, that when it comes to life, there are far more important things sometimes. And I think we had a version of this discussion earlier, I feel like every week at this point, but when we talk about people shouldn't risk their lives just to go see a movie in a theater,
Yeah. And films, for me especially, really enrich the living,
Right. Yeah.
so much of my life is spent looking forward to that next big movie that I'm excited about. Like, believe me, like, I know, like, I love film too, and the whole experience of it, the theaters and stuff. But it's not everything. It's not life. It's not worth losing people around you over that. It's probably a good example I can give is when, you know, we talk about the American flag and people are more mad about, quote unquote, the desecration of the American flag than actual people. And it's like, the flag represents those people. You're not supposed to care about the flag more than the people. And that, to me, that's the way it is with film as well.
You know, what's really unfortunate, to me, what I found so eerie was the timing of his passing. We're going to talk about this right now after this, but, you know, this entire summer has been filled with civil unrest. It's been there for a long time, but George Floyd's murder was kind of the spark that really got everyone mobilized and angry. It died down for a few weeks, although we should say protests continued in places where the president saw fit to send in federal agents to stir shit up, and that's what happened. But yet again, you give it enough time and you have another racist white cop that goes too far, and for the pleasure of being able to openly execute people, it seems like this individual by the name of Jacob Blake, we all seen the video, he was shot 7 times in the back, and that, you know, we had a national outcry for that yet again. A lot of the people in the sports world, a lot of their players happen to be people of color, happen to be African Americans, and they've decided for themselves, fuck this. And they made a national demonstration out of walking out on these sporting events because of it. And we're right back out there to protest. And, you know, it's just, I feel like this point is so obvious, but it needs to be reiterated. What must it be like to be a black man in America? Seeing every reminder just being a complete fuck you. Honestly. And that's how a lot of people expressed it last week. And it's not enough as if, you know, this is how this country sees you and treats you, but the literal Black Panther died. Just to, you know, as the cherry on top.
And that's
who was an icon.
That's the thing. Chadwick Boseman was he was a very intelligent man. His whole career, like we said, was sort of built around fighting that, you know. It was giving black people a voice, challenging the perceptions of a lot of the more negative stereotypes of black people in America, you know, displaying black heroes in as best the way as he could, you know, through his films. He was this wasn't, you know, something that was a secret. He was at the forefront of this, you know. He was political. You know, for all the people that cry about get politics out of movies, his whole career was political. A lot of people were sharing that, yes, his last tweet before he went was Kamala Harris, the VP announcement. And I saw some people get mad at that, but it's like, at that point, he knew he probably didn't have much time left. I'd feel at that point everything he did and said was deliberate, and I think to him it is important, that representation. And representation,
progress is progress.
Yeah,
progress is progress, and she's the first black woman to be nominated for the vice presidency. That's history.
And yeah, I think Chadwick Boseman, more than anyone, would want you to look at his legacy and use that as inspiration to promote change at a political level, at the filmmaking level, at every level. And yeah, to what you said, just to be a black person in America, I wanted to say especially at this time, but fuck, like throughout the entire history of America, it's not like it was easier in the past. In fact, it was worse.
Go watch Ava DuVernay's 13th documentary film on Netflix. It will open your eyes if you really have no idea what it's... I mean, and we really don't, right? Because we're not. I mean, speaking for Peter and I, but for those listeners who are not, Black Americans, African Americans, if you want to claim as if you have the slightest idea, you shouldn't, because you don't, and you want some education on that, that's a good place to start, is Ava DuVernay's film.
And the thing is, like, there's so few black heroes in this country who are allowed to even become heroes, who are allowed to even grow old, to have that opportunity in this country. So to be taken so young at this sort of vital point in our history, it's tough. It's really, really tough. This one affected me.
It was deeply saddening, I think is the right way to say. I think, that day I actually was having a pretty good time. The news hit and it kind of shook me. I was kind of in the worst possible mood I had been in quite a bit, and believe me, it's not as if the other days that week were any better. I mean, they were great days because, well, literally everything was just falling apart. I mean, this was the week a fucking unsurvivable Category 4 hurricane hit the Gulf, wildfires in California. You had a Nazi demonstration for 4 days in a row in the White House. I mean, it was just depressing.
Yeah. It's not like those things are going to get better.
Yeah.
They're not. So it's tough. You take the good anywhere you can right now.
Yeah. That's kind of where we're at in this particular moment. And look, for for however hopeless it is right now in the Senate or any of the leaders, because there are no leaders, that anything concrete will happen on Black Lives Matter, it does in fact matter to have people out there and protest. And it says a lot that people have reached a boiling point. And look, we're at a point where it is so in the consciousness of America right now and Americans that these demonstrations at some point are going to help, are going to make a difference, are making a difference right now. But unfortunately, and I feel everyone understands this to a degree, as you said with COVID, there is no hope of anything happening until we replace the current lack of leadership, shall we say.
Yeah, like voting is vital. It's vital. And I think what people need to remember is when you vote, you never vote. Voting isn't voting along your personal beliefs or your personal, I don't know what the word is. You don't vote very just stringently along, they have to be perfectly in line. You have to vote for the best one out of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, when we talk about politics, I've said, first of all, 95% of politics isn't voting. 95% of politics is every day, with the demonstrations, Black Lives Matter, what they're doing, holding rallies, endlessly, calling your representatives, pushing. You have to push every day, not just at the phone booth, but not the voter booth, but you do have to show up to the voter booth. And when there's a primary, you vote for the best candidate that there possibly is that has a chance, and you fight like hell to get in. And if they get in, great. If they don't get in, okay. And then when you're on to the general, you vote for the best candidate that has a chance of winning. Right now, that's Joe Biden. Would I want someone better? Sure. But you gotta deal with reality, okay? It's I think the best way I can put it is there's two bowls in front of you. And I know I say this all the time, but I added a third caveat to it. It's one bowl is filled with food that's nutritious, but you don't really like it that much. Second bowl is filled with glass. And there's three options. You choose to eat the glass, in which case I don't know why you would do that. You choose to eat the food that's nutritious, but you don't really like it that much, in which case you have sustenance. Maybe it kind of sucks because it doesn't taste that well, but you continue to survive. Or 3, you choose neither, in which case you were held down and force-fed the glass.
That's honestly pretty vivid. That's a pretty vivid image.
That's the situation we're in right now. Because when it comes to voting, people like to pretend there's this magical third option where you abstain. There is no abstaining. There will be a president at the end of this, and there's only 2 options when it comes to that. So you gotta vote. And you gotta vote down ballot too. Every vote at every level counts. That's how you create change. And then once they're in, that's when 95% of the work actually happens. That's when you hold their feet to the fire. And you push and you push and you push. And when you finally get what you want, you go, awesome. I want more. And that's how change is made.
Yeah. Well, let's get into, Peter, what we saw this week. Would you like to get into what you were watching, or shall we get what I have seen out of the way with first?
Let's get it out of the way.
Since we're already on this train. So I saw, unfortunately, the Republican National Convention all 4 days last week.
And I didn't, because if I wanted to see that kind of bullshit, I'd just watch the History Channel and watch those old videos of Nazi rallies.
I honestly feel it was about as bad as what you would have expected. I mean, look, this is the Republican Party is at a point where they're just complete propagandists, and everything out of their mouths is a lie. That's what we expected. That's what it was. I mean, most of the time it was honestly downright boring.
Mm-hmm.
It really was. It was kind of low energy for the most part. There were parts of Trump's address where he got some good licks on Biden in terms of attacking from the left, and I have more to say on that in a little bit. But for the most part, I noticed that toward the last 10 minutes of his speech, it seemed as if he was falling asleep. And so were the rest of us. And that's what happens when you give him a fucking teleprompter speech. I wish, just for a pure entertainment standpoint, they wouldn't give him a fucking teleprompter speech and just go off. Yeah. He can still get boring there too, but at least it'd be more interesting.
The only thing worse than a Nazi rally is a boring Nazi rally.
I know, and that's kind of what it was. I mean, look, they were painting this picture of you won't survive in Joe Biden's America. Well, we're in Trump's America, and shit's kind of.
He went to go tour the destruction of the evil Antifa terrorists. I don't know. I guess apparently Antifa's retaking entire cities all over the country. Sounds pretty awesome to me. But so much of his re-election seems to be him standing in front of the destruction his administration has wrought and going, do you really want this in a Biden? This is the future of a Biden presidency, a Biden America.
It would work better if he wasn't the president, but he is.
But you are the president, so it makes zero sense. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. I don't know how to explain. It's like if I cooked you like a really shitty meal, and then I'm like, see, this is the kind of food other people would make for you. And it's like, but you made this, like, what is... And again, of course, it plays well with his conservatives, because at this point, they really are just, they're a cult. Like, QAnon is a death cult. It seems they've fully embraced it. They lie, so, like, there is no blinking in the lies anymore. Like, zero blinking. It's just full-on lies, and they know it. They can do it because they don't their base will follow them no matter what. And this isn't me being biased. There's literal, like, there's been studies where if you're like Democrats, they're more likely to follow sort of sets of policy, where if it doesn't matter if a Republican says it or a Democrat says it, they'll respond well of its policy they like. Whereas as a Republican voter, they will flip on a fucking dime.
Yep.
Based on whose mouth it comes out of.
Yeah.
It's a cult. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
I should have mentioned this when we were talking about Black Lives Matter, but it is, politically related, obviously. But there was a stunning report that came out last week that seemingly no major news network, bothered to cover, but it came from German intelligence that said, reported that the FBI has had documents for 2 decades now that, neo-Nazis and white supremacists have infiltrated law enforcement all over the country. So there's that.
Yeah.
There's that. That may help to explain why black people are being killed, right? Just openly. I'm sure that's not just a coincidence. My God. No, you're right. They're a death cult. And more to the point, it felt like a legitimate Nazi rally. It's not hyperbole, I feel, to say it. To me, the best speech, just out of pure passion and energy, but that felt like the most like a fucking image out of the Third Reich, was fucking Kimberly Guilfoyle screaming at the top of her lungs to an empty crowd, as if, like, it literally felt like something out of a Nazi movie. Except with no crowd. But she was given it like that 100. Even Trump was tweeting about it. Well, not tweeting, but he was like raving about it for days. According to Insight reports, that was the best speech of the convention.
Yeah, no.
And then all that to the disgusting display of the White House. Look, I'm not one of these people that's like, oh, he broke the Hatch Act. Arrest him. I mean, yeah, arrest him. He is, breaking the law. But people don't care about such a law like that being broken. They care about what you're going to do for them. But to the point, him using the White House like that and dressing it up, I think it was Brett Ehrlich from the Young Turks that said this comparison. It was Trump turning the White House into his castle and inviting the commoners to the castle.
Yeah, that's what it was.
It pretty much, and just like from a complete pageantry, it was unreal to see the staging of it, which was, I mean, to his credit, it was beautifully arranged. It looked pretty. Of course, it was irresponsible in the highest, fashion, because it was a super spreader, and I'm sure people got coronavirus from that. But from the staging of it, he was introduced from the Truman balcony. He was walking down the steps. He literally at one point pointed to the White House, and I think summed up the election is, the point is, we're here pointing to the White House and they're not, which was kind of really just all right. And then fireworks, he had a fucking opera singer do a couple of like performances. It became a full-blown concert. It literally was state television at its finest.
Yeah. No, like I don't even feel because before Trump and even during his presidency, I feel like I've tried to be very precise with how I worded conservatives and Republicans and Trump even himself. So this, believe me, this isn't an exaggeration whenever I say they're a cult, they're full-on fascist, because it's overwhelmingly true in everything they say and do. I genuinely believe, like right now, they were trying to tear apart the First Amendment. Where was it? Like Louisiana or something? They say like if
Tennessee, I think it was Tennessee. Yeah.
You're arrested under protest, then they'll take away your right to vote. And which you got to understand, Trump gets 4 more years. He packs the courts and courts and courts. These laws, judges will uphold them. He gets the entire Supreme Court. They will strip away, like, they joke about, like today I think he said, oh, they're going to investigate the terrorist group Antifa. You think it's funny now. I swear to you, he wins in just a few years. You will have law enforcement rolling up to people's houses because they had hashtag Black Lives Matters in their Twitter bios. Like, you will have that level of craziness. It's bad. You already have unmarked vans rolling up, just grabbing people and then throwing them into the van and driving away. This is not an exaggeration. This is how fascism rises in a country.
Well, look at what happened this weekend. We had a bunch of Trump supporters roll into Portland, mimicking ISIS, literally, with their trucks and their flags and all the garb that they use. And they started shit. They literally were there to start shit. They were the ones provoking everyone. They were firing
paintballs.
What was it called? Paintballs at them. They were hazing people. And it's like... And then they're surprised when someone was unfortunately killed.
But see, that's the thing. This is why Democrats need to stop, letting them control the narrative, because 100 Black Lives Matter protesters, peaceful, could be murdered tomorrow, and they'll be like, shouldn't have been out past midnight. There was a curfew. You should have been outside. Kind of looks like...
That's what they said last week. Yeah. So there was also a mass shooting last week, basically. I don't know if it's called mass shooting. But you have a 17-year-old Trump Nazi kid carrying... He's part of a militia, which, by the way, the police seem to be okay with having an open militia out there assisting them or whatever. They let him pass across state lines, which is illegal. You can't even have a registered weapon that young across state lines. And he kills 2 protesters.
Yeah.
And then Tucker Carlson of Fox News said, well, what did you expect was going to happen if law enforcement can't do their job?
Yeah. And they'll say, like, oh, my God, look at these Black Lives Matters. Look, they threw a water bottle. But then Trump will be like, he was literally questioned on them rolling in with paintball guns. And he was like, oh, that's peaceful protest. Shooting other people with paintballs is peaceful protest. The cruelty is the point. They will, for every one of them that gets a slight cut. Like, remember that old man in his 70s or 80s that was pushed onto the floor, hit his head on the ground and started bleeding out of his ear?
Oh my God.
Trump's immediate response was like, he was an Antifa operative. Basically, fuck him. When that wasn't not true. But we know it's not true. Like, this is fascism. This is how it happens. And I don't know what to tell you. Like, if he wins, there will not be free elections in 4 years. This isn't an exaggeration. It really isn't.
It's getting worse every day. It's getting worse every week. And you're right. And you know what was actually surprising to me? That night that he had his acceptance speech and he delivered that whole thing, there were protesters gathered on the north side of the White House. Mm-hmm. I was surprised he didn't send the agents after them to disperse them or to attack them, because he's done it before several times.
Mm-hmm. But again, his supporters like it. They like it when people on the left die. They enjoy it. And they'll feign like, oh, how dare you say so? But it's true in everything they say and do regarding the blatant hypocrisy when it comes to these situations. They don't care. The cruelty is the point. They enjoy the cruelty. There's a reason why they adore the idea of the wall so much. That's the reason why Build the Wall became such a vital symbol for them.
Because they're hateful people?
Yeah, they're hateful people, and it represented keeping the bad brown people out, the others. Like, that's the new talking point from Trump. We're going to save the suburbs because we're not going to let them bring in low-income housing. And you can't see it, but I'm doing the quotation fingers. And it's like, yeah, we're not going to bring in those dirty brown people to live next to you in the suburbs where you're safe. That's literally, it's the most obvious racist dog whistles humanly imaginable. But when you call this out,
remember
they'll feign ignorance and stuff.
Remember this, guys. 2020 started with Trump single-handedly provoking World War III.
Did that happen? Did I wait? I'm trying to think of all the bad shit that's happened this year.
Iran. We assassinated Iran's top military leader.
Oh, that's right. We did. Oh, God. He's been so shitty when it comes... like, unironically, like, a lot of people on the left like to give Obama shit, and, like, they like to talk about drone strikes and all this and that. But drone strikes have gone up, like, infinity% under Donald Trump. Their policy is we don't give a fuck who we kill. Like, it's bad. It is a million times worse than it ever was under Obama. Because we've been talking about domestic so much, but like foreign policy is unbelievably bad as well. Please vote. That's all I ask.
I will say though, this may be the aspect that frustrated me the most about the RNC is, of course, it's all a lie, but there are tactics and certain phrases they use that I think it can be successful in tricking a lot of people. Mm-hmm. When you had certain speakers say things like working class, the working people, end the endless wars, down with NAFTA, down with CAFTA, with you know, the trade deals. The Democrats didn't speak to any of those things, and the result of that is they left themselves wide open. And several times that week, including a lot of the attacks that Trump, well, some of the attacks, not a lot, but some of the attacks that Trump used on Biden in his speech were from the left.
Yeah. And it's obviously bullshit, because when you looked at the official Republican, like, this is what we're going to do, it was, we're going to end the wars and we're going to ramp up and win the war on terror. Literally both. In the, what the fuck? I like, how do you, it's all bullshit. It's all lies.
Yes.
But I guess the good thing in comparison to last go around is he actually has a record to go on,
right?
Where you,
right.
Because before they can go like, well, I don't know, you know, I know this other person's record, but he's coming in as an outsider telling me I'm gonna actually, he's not afraid to say what's on, all the bullshit we heard during 2016. But now he's got a record. And for all his talk about how bad the trade deals are, he didn't make good trade deals. For all this talk about how like, I'm going to save all these jobs, he didn't save anyone's jobs. He really didn't. Like, I think he lost more jobs in his term than Obama ever did. Like, I don't know. Like, so many jobs got outsourced.
Yeah.
Like, coal. The coal industry is dead. Like, it really is. He comes out here and says, he's going to save these industries. I think they lost over 900 jobs.
Well, it's dead, so pretty much just kill it, basically. Look, I mean, a lot of it was just, while, some of those speakers did address those leftist issues in their own weird, fucked up ways, it was also surrounded by a bunch of garbage. A lot of transphobic, homophobic language, anti-immigrant language. They were half the time talking about cancel culture and abortion, which are like, all right. No, look, it was a disgusting display. It was mostly boring, and it is dangerous. But when it comes to the matter of the election, what's different this time around is not only does he have a record, he's very unpopular on himself, basically. And the key that we have to remind ourselves is that what decided the election of 2016 was the group of voters that said they hated Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. And when they voted, they had to choose one of them, and they hated Hillary more than Trump. This time around, they hate Trump much more than they do Biden. Yeah. And Biden is winning those voters, and that could very well be the key.
Yeah. But yeah, Trump really does. He's a snake oil salesman. He fails at everything he's given at, but he's a smooth talker, so he's able to trick people into giving him more. And that's basically what the convention was. It was as boring and empty as the man himself. Is that all you saw?
Basically, I will say congratulations, Ed Markey, getting reelected. We're happy about that.
Yes. Co-author of the Green New Deal.
Yes.
Let's get her done.
They'll get her done. All right. That's my spiel.
Okay, let's talk about the shit I watched. I think it was better than the shit you watched.
Because mine was legitimate shit. I mean, let's be real.
Yeah. Right now, I am in fact watching. I'm probably almost done with season 1. Schitts Creek. Because I needed something to watch, I finished Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Wait, say it again?
I finished watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Okay.
So, I thought like, okay, I'll watch this. And yeah, I'm on season 1.
That's right.
1.
You've said that you were watching it, and so you finished the whole thing?
Yes. So I finished I didn't finish season 1. I'm currently watching season 1 on Netflix, and it's well, I mean, you wouldn't shut up about it, so.
What?
Schitts Creek.
You see, that's why I was asking, because I wasn't listening for half a second. I thought you said Schitts Creek, and I perked up. Like, what, you saw Schitts Creek?
I'm probably almost done with season 1.
Okay. And you enjoying it?
It's cute.
It's cute, huh?
It's cute.
It gets better. Mm-hmm. The first season is mainly just what it is, but
it feels. And I don't know if this is just to me, but it feels insanely low budget.
It may be designed that way. I'm not sure how much money they have at Pop TV.
Because I feel like most of it is in a hotel room.
Yeah. No, yeah. I see it. It is a Canadian production, so I don't know how much that means to it, mostly Canadian actors. I will say, like, it sneaks up on you. It kind of at least it caught me off guard how much I had given a shit about these characters. I feel like by the end of season 2, I was like, whoa, they're doing something here that makes me actually like these people. Okay. And root for them. So
far, there are no Bluths.
No, they're not. That's not what this is.
The Bluths are my people. So yeah, it's cute. It's keeping my attention. So yeah, I'm currently watching that. I guess this counts. I only watched one episode. Free Creep Show. The TV show on Shudder.
Oh, okay.
So it's fun. It's good. I like it. I like the Creep Show TV show. If you don't know, this Creep Show was a movie made, was it the 80s? Probably the 80s. Written by Stephen King and directed by George A. Romero.
Ooh.
Of Night of the Living Dead fame. It was a horror anthology, and it's sort of in the style and vein of old horror comics. There's like do you know what the Crypt Keeper is?
The Crypt Keeper. No.
Okay, never mind. I was gonna compare. It's you kind of have this like main ghoulish looking dead, the creep show. And
I know the Creeper from Scooby-Doo.
No. But the movie's like 3 or 4. I think it's 3. Was it 4? I can't remember. Different like horror stories, and it's sort of like inside a horror comic book, that kind of thing. But yeah, so they had they made a TV show based on that kind of thing. Creepshow TV show on Shudder. And I know there's going to be season 2. I think season 1 there's only 6 episodes. There wasn't a lot of episodes. Each episode's an hour, and there's like 2 stories in each episode. The one I saw, I think it was the last episode of season 1. It was a dude. It was about weight loss. A guy is looking for a way to lose weight, and then he finds this experimental weight loss place guru with 100% success rate. They found these special leeches in the Amazon.
Is he an American? Because, I mean, that's hook, line, and sinker.
Very American, yes. Leeches that will suck away your weight. And I think you maybe, there's some twists as far as the story goes, but you can probably guess which way that goes, horror-wise.
It doesn't end well.
No, obviously not. And then the second one was like, supposed to be set in the 80s, and it's like a young girl. Her dad claimed he saw Chappie, which is like it's like what's that in real life, that like the lake monster that people claim might be real.
Loch Ness?
Like Loch Ness. It's basically like Loch Ness, but they called it Chappie, Lake Champlain. In the 80s, her dad disappeared when she was young, and he claimed he saw it, and then every night he would try and go and find it until one day his body washed up on shore, and now the young daughter is like obsessed with finding it too. But you know, her mother remarried a real asshole. You know, he's kind of stepped in, and you know, kind of spirals out from there. She stumbles upon, you can guess what happens as to whether Chappie is really real or not. And it's so yeah, they're cute, they're short, they got fun special effects. They're cheesy, but I love anything with a little bit of cheese. So yeah.
Speaking about horror, have you made any progress about your schedule for To the Table coming back this October for Halloween?
Woo, yay. Not yet. I have some ideas, but I want to look into a couple other films, but I haven't. When I have a set list, I will present it to you. Almost there. Not
all in good time, of course. We have about 4 weeks till October, just to tease that for you listeners, as well as some stuff that we also are planning for Red Spotlight, which includes audio commentaries on The Shining and Doctor Sleep. So that's going to be fun.
I've heard of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then what did I watch? Oh, and the other thing I watched was Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Ooh, I was going to ask you if you'd seen it.
Yes, I have.
It's gotten a good reaction from what I've seen.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. It is, again, very cute, very funny, very heartwarming. It doesn't have a nihilistic bone in its body. I'll put it that way.
Well, in these times, that's a breath of fresh air.
Yeah, it is. It really is. You should really watch it. I do. Maybe we can do a double feature with Mulan. I don't know, but
I wouldn't say no. I definitely wouldn't say no to that. I mean, it sounds like exactly the kind of mood that I'd want to feel right now.
Yeah.
But I will say, look, I'm ultimately happy, not just for fans of this series, but look. Let's be frank. Comedic sequels after years and years, if not decades, do not fare well in the slightest bit. And I mean, if you're saying this is good, I mean, this would, I think, easily rank up among one of the more successful and consistent, from a quality standpoint, comedy franchises.
Not only is it a comedy sequel, it's a threequel, and all three films are at this point pretty well received. Like, that's pretty crazy. Like, it's hard to get a good trilogy. It's basically impossible to get a good comedy sequel. So to get a good comedy trilogy is like, fuck. And then again, one of them is like 30 years later. Like, basically everything is stacked up against the movie working, but it works.
Because the original Bill and Ted came out in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
That is so crazy.
Do you know?
I mean, go ahead.
Do you know what Bill and Ted is about?
I know one of them. They're time traveling, right?
In the first one, is they're time traveling throughout history because they have to, and they're collecting historical figures because they have to pass their history exam. And the reason they have to pass their history exam is because it is prophesized at some point in the future they will form a rock band and they will play a song to unite the world. So in order to get them to that point,
inject that movie into my blood right now, man. I need that.
That was Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. They had their first step was just passing history, and then in the second, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, they die, and their journey.
The Grim Reaper's in that one. Right?
The Grim Reaper.
I've seen some clips.
Is their buddy, and they journey through heaven and hell to try and get back. And it does end with them rocking out, and it's this big thing, and it's like, wow, And then the third one,
Bill and Ted Face the Music.
It's they've tried their whole life to write the song that'll unite the world, and it just never happened. Their career is basically in the dumps, and they're just kind of at the point like, shit, like we failed. Until they're pulled into the future, and they're like, hey, the song that you were supposed to create to save the world, to unite the world. It was supposed to be played in 77 minutes. You got 77 minutes to... So they're like, their great idea is like, well, why don't we just keep going into our own personal future to the point at which we actually wrote the song and just take it from ourselves in the future and then bring it back to this point to play it and unite the world. And then their daughters, because they have daughters now, they come along, they have their own subplot where they really want to help their dads. So they go throughout history to find the world's greatest musicians to help their dad to make a band for their dads to play the song to unite the world. Yeah, it's adorable.
That sounds like something I desperately need. In fact, all of those movies, which I'd never seen before, sound like kind of a pretty perfect viewing experience. Wow. It sounds honestly hilarious. And also kind of touching in a weird way. Wow, man. You gotta say, you really sold me on these movies.
Yeah. And they're very unique. Like, they're weird. They're off the wall, obviously, with their
zany.
They're zany, but I think what makes them so unique as well is that they're all very lighthearted. Like, they're
cynical.
They're not cynical. They're not mean-spirited. Like, Bill and Ted are genuinely good people. And
could it be like kind of like the anti Rick and Morty?
Yeah. Basically. But Bill and Ted, like, even though they have like whoa, dude, like, but it's all earnest.
Right.
The reason why they succeed so much in their adventures is just because, like, people like them. Like, they strike up a friendship with death in the second one. And yeah. And also like the relationship with their daughters in the movie, like it's you could have easily played it like, oh, get away, dad, you guys are lame, but like the daughters are genuinely, like, they genuinely love each other, you know. Mm-hmm. The dads and the daughters are like, yeah, we want to help you guys. And the humor isn't derived necessarily from them being idiots or mean-spirited, or it's more from just like the silly situations that they find themselves in. Like in the second one, there's this, and this is also like where a lot of their zaniness and off the wall like weirdness comes from. Like, shoot, what's the movie? Ingmar Bergman's fuck. It's a Criterion. I've literally watched the movie. Why did I forget it? But it's where that famous version of death comes from. Who was the one in the actor in the very beginning of The Force Awakens?
Max von Sydow.
Yeah, Max von Sydow. It's an old movie. I can't believe...
Exorcist, right?
Fuck. I'm so... Wait, hold on. I need to look up the name of the movie. Cause
yeah, Max von Sydow is the actor.
Yeah, it is Max von Sydow, but it's...
Rest in peace, by the way. He passed away, I think, last year or earlier this year.
Is it Sydow or Sydow?
It's Sydow.
The seventh seal. And that's where, like, the famous imagery, because in that movie, he's like a knight returning from the Crusades, and it's dark and it's existential and all that. And that's where you have the famous imagery of like him literally playing chess with death, and death. And that's where the famous image of what death looks like, with like a white pale face, and then the black thing with the scythe, comes from that movie. And they very much homage that Death's look in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And then they even have a scene, again, riffing on the seventh seal in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, in which they play Death, but instead of chess, they play Battleship. And it's just like little silly shit like that that's just so funny that these movies bring. So yeah, I don't know. It's cool. I enjoyed it. It was nice.
Keanu Reeves is having quite the renaissance, isn't he?
The Keanu-sance.
The Keanu. I'm happy for him. Honestly, he's also one of those people that comes across as a good guy. And I recently
don't say
saw
it.
some.
I don't want to lose him.
Oh God. Oh, but I recently saw some unearthed quotes from him from 20 years ago. It's good stuff. Don't worry. It's not like most cases, but he was quoted in some magazine kind of like knocking himself, like he didn't consider himself a good actor. Which, I mean, that was kind of the joke back then.
Yeah.
I mean,
like, I don't know how true this was, but I don't know how. I know the answer to this, but I'm always gonna ask. Have you seen what's his name? Bram Stoker's Dracula, in which Keanu Reeves is in it.
No.
I know it's no, but I like to ask. The director of The Godfather, what's his name? Coppola made that Bram Stoker's Dracula. And what's his Keanu's in it, and he has like the most god awful English accent that the world has ever seen.
Wow.
And I had heard, it's a rumor, I don't know how true it is, but I guess Coppola never really told him anything because he was such a nice guy, and he didn't really want
Wow.
he didn't want to like hurt him or something like that. And I just thought that was funny. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, the other instance also would not be that appropriate considering it was his daughter, but we all know Sofia Coppola's performance in Godfather Part 3 is like one of the most
it was panned like crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's different. That's his daughter. So like, yeah. Of course he's gonna but she came back with a stellar directing career. A lot of people would probably say comparable to her father's. So yeah, Keanu's awesome. Alex Winter, who plays, I'll be honest, I don't know which one's Ted and which one's Bill, but Alex Winters is the non-Keanu one.
Right.
And he's also great. He's fantastic. And he hasn't acted in like 20 years.
Really?
Yeah, they pulled him.
Damn.
They pulled him back into acting for this, and he's great.
And sometimes it doesn't necessarily work out all that well.
No.
Other examples I think of, well, some of the recent examples that I can think of where some actors have been pulled out of retirement. Obviously, there's Joe Pesci last year for The Irishman, where he had not done a movie in like decades, it seems like. Carrie Fisher with The Force Awakens. And I think ultimately people landed on her being a little rusty in her performance in that film.
She really came into her own in The Last Jedi, though.
I know, right? It's kind of day and night, the performances with Carrie Fisher. I think she gave her best performance in Episode 8.
No, she was great. You could tell in Force Awakens, a little rusty and maybe a little nervous, just kind of. It's the role as everything's over your shoulder.
The pressure.
And then also she wasn't given that much at The Force Awakens. Whereas she's got some real emotional moments in The Last Jedi. And I thought she was utterly fantastic in it as well. So yeah, but I mean, that's what happens when you have when the movies are so focused on nostalgia. Yeah. You're going to have these scenarios where they bring people back. So, yeah, that's what I watched.
infinitely better than what I watched. I was kind of just drowning in misery, and you had a whole bunch of fun based on what you were saying.
I mean, life is short. I don't know what to tell you.
I know. Speaking of other stuff, other things that I did see this week, but are kind of included in other podcasts that we've recorded for this network. So, documentary The Boys, based on the Sherman brothers, Richard and Robert Sherman, famous songwriters, with Walt Disney, Mary Poppins, a whole bunch of stuff there. It was a damn good documentary. It's on Disney Plus. It was actually directed by their sons. And it was interesting because it's not that documentary where it's like everything was like all fairy tale and it was like, here's their career. To me, which is actually kind of the hook of this movie, and it tells you in the beginning, these brothers loved each other, but they didn't like each other all that much. And there was a lot of contentious history, which I was not aware of.
Yeah.
So that was quite fascinating. That's actually up right now on the Fantasy Fair. I also did an audio commentary with David Francisco. We did Spider-Man Far From Home. And yeah, ultimately it was interesting experience of that movie. I have such like a whiplash relationship with that movie. I go back and forth about where I land on it. But one of the things that I really realized in this commentary, just a little bit of a tease, it is, I think, one of the least impressive movies from a set piece standpoint, because I can't remember any of them. I remember all of the set pieces from Homecoming, but they just seem very forgettable in Far From Home.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the last one with like all the different cameras.
Mm-hmm. The drones.
Yeah, I'm starting to find just like your average Marvel film just frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot where it's like, yeah, this is well done and I like it, but it's also just so blah. And
that's what I was saying
know
repeatedly.
You can do more.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because like, okay, all of what you just said, I agree with. On top of that, maybe it could just be we're growing beyond it, but it almost just feels as if it's not just at its average, but it also is just like the least interesting it's ever been. Like there are certain things, if you're talking about, at least for me anyway, from Captain Marvel to Ant-Man and the Wasp to Far From Home to Black Panther, there are certain things those films have in common that are that may speak to a larger deficiency within Marvel Studios, because there are some things that they do in those movies that they were so far better handled in earlier movies, but there's this feeling that they're not trying that hard with those films because they were focusing everything on the two big Avenger movies, because they all came out around that time.
It also kind of feels though that it's like a factory at this point. Like,
yeah.
Like they've gotten down. Like when it comes to villains, we know we have to just hit these 4 points. You know, whatever that. Mm-hmm. When it comes to humor, we hit it here, here, and here. Like before, there was like real experimentation of like, okay, how do we make this work? And because of that, there was some risks taken and some things, and it's like, oh, okay. And then also that's just the added enjoyment of like, wow, I never thought I would see this shit on the big screen.
Yes.
But now it's like they thought like, okay, it's the Marvel formula, you know, let's just print it, ship it, put on the Doctor Strange cover, print it, ship it, put on the Spider-Man cover, print it, ship it.
In fact, that was the film you and I both were feeling like this, right? Was with Doctor Strange.
Yeah.
Where it felt like Marvel movie the movie, and then it just ended up getting repackaged, but with a different label on it. And that's unfortunate because these characters I feel are great, and they could be great, but they're not being utilized. The films themselves don't feel as if they're servicing the characters all that well. I will say this. I am choosing, you may laugh at this, but I am choosing to feel optimistic in two choices. Sam Raimi doing Doctor Strange. Again, this is all we'll see. But I'm choosing to be optimistic because everything else is just not at all optimistic. And also Nia DaCosta doing Captain Marvel. Because I feel like they have to understand that something went wrong. Even though it did make $1 billion, no one likes the character. No one cares for the movie, quite frankly. Even though it did make that money. And from what has been talked about, they have big plans for Captain Marvel. At least Captain Marvel 2. Nia DaCosta has directed the upcoming Candyman, which I think by this point we've already would have seen if it had come out in theaters.
Definitely, yeah. Well, so like months ago.
I'm choosing to be optimistic that those are signs of, because those moves of getting different directors for the sequels are what they did so successfully in Phase 2. Whereas in all of the other examples, they just got the same people and do the same approach for the subsequent sequels. So I'm hoping that it's not all going to be generic and blah and meh. Hope springs eternal.
Yeah. And again, you said like maybe you're outgrowing. That's not true, because I look at, Batman number 50 million movie.
I look at the ridiculousness of the costumes in Suicide Squad, and I'm like, I love this shit.
Yeah.
This is so good. So yeah, maybe I don't think I'm outgrowing the genre. Yeah. What I'm definitely outgrowing is the mediocre stuff.
The formula, I would say. Yeah, because it no longer feels like a movie to me. It feels like a Happy Kids meal toy.
Yeah.
Where it's like this was packaged and, recreated and sold all around the world. Yeah. I mean, we've explained it before, where it's just the formula. They're applying it to every movie, and it's just, I don't know. But I mean, currently right now, I think there is a good number of comic book films, when you take into account both Marvel and DC, where I am like, yeah, very excited. So it's like, you gotta look at the positives. There's definitely a number of them where I'm like, fuck yeah, I can't wait. What
we discussed those last week.
Yeah.
In fact.
What else?
So, we can move on to the box office. Speaking of a comic book movie coming out, one did this past week. The updates. The first major release in months came out in theaters. The New Mutants, the long-awaited New Mutants, released here in the States, and it made $7 million. Now, that is relatively nothing. We're talking about theaters that not all of them are open, and all of them are at 30% capacity, and blah, 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 blah. This exceeded expectations. I think it was thought to have been around 4 or 5 million, so it ended up doing 7 million.
That's pretty good.
When you couple this with Tenet, it opened in the international market. It's going to open in America this week, but it broke some records and ended up getting $53 million. That also exceeded expectations. It was thought to have been doing anywhere between 25 to 40 million. So, there's good news and bad news, I feel, with this. I guess if there was some good news with this, is that there may be hope for the theatrical experience, in that people were willing to sacrifice themselves to go out and see some movies.
People, yeah, this idea that everyone just wants to see movies at home, I think is kind of shattered, because if you're going to have that experiment, now is the time. And I think it's pretty clear that people, they want to go to the movies. Like, they do. It seems to be that is something that people genuinely want. And as someone who loves theater going, again, that's a bright side thing, I guess.
Right.
But also, I think we got to remember, this was the foreign markets, and they that's not our country. They have
No.
they have leaders that don't have the mind of brain dead children. So their countries are a lot better off than ours. So going to the theater isn't nearly as much of a risk, I would say, as it probably would be here.
Not nearly, I feel.
Yeah.
Not even close. Not even in the same ballpark, if we're being honest with that. And as far as New Mutants is concerned, I mean, it's been kind of that may have been the only positive headline this week, because, I mean, other stuff that I read, speaking of the film's quality, got terrible reviews. The Rotten Tomatoes score was, I think, in the low 20s. Scott Mendelson of Forbes called it the worst X-Men movie ever, which, hilariously enough, what's her name? Maisie Williams retweeted that article saying that it sounds like a must-see.
Get your tickets now. I gotta say, she's so great. Like, she has such a good, I feel, attitude.
Sense of humor? Yeah.
About, because when you're a working actor, like, so much of what you work on, the quality just isn't in your hands. You do the best you can. You're gonna have, great shit, and you're gonna have.
I mean, look at the
shit.
Rise of Skywalker. Look at all those great actors.
Yeah,
they turned in really good performances, but ultimately the characterization and the direction was not in their hands, and look what happened.
Yeah, and that's just the life of an actor, right? But she has such a good attitude about it. I think it was after like the Game of Thrones finale, she had tweeted out, "I'm just here for the memes," which, again, because what I love about it is, like, she's not even trashing. She's just taking it with stride, which is it's such a. She's great. That's funny.
Yeah, but it also got ugly in the. With New Mutants on the headlines, because evidently this is kind of a controversy, or a controversy, as British people would say. I learned.
Would they say it that way?
Word. No, they say it that controversy.
Oh.
Controversy is controversy.
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay.
The English may have invented the language, but we perfected it. So
they would kill you for that. What was it? So
with what
in the
guns? They're English.
In the end credits, it turns out that they misspelled the comics creator's name, and he got pissed about it, and he trashed them on Twitter, and people were upset. Like, just there was, the day that it came out, there were leaks that Fox was even more unhappy with the movie than they had let on. Although it was pretty clear that they weren't happy with it, considering how long it had been delayed. These
leaks always conveniently drop right after the movie comes out, and it gets bad reviews every time. At that point, that's when shit conveniently starts to leak. Okay, whatever. But no, like, as a comic creator, I get it. Like, these people work really hard their entire life to make shit. Like, people should have shit on comics for a long time, and even now, like, people, it's not like the industry is doing great, to say the least. It's not like it's crazy, because you create these characters, you create these storylines in these worlds, and then you don't really make much money of anything, and then they go on to make these like billion-dollar franchises, and you get nothing really in return. Like, I think Marvel specifically is really bad at that, paying their creators. So, like, the only real consolation prize is being able to go to the theaters. You pay for the ticket, because, by the way, you weren't invited to the premiere. Looking at the movie screen, and sometimes it's shit, sometimes they butcher the characters and storylines you created, But at the very end of, at least at the very end of the day, you can look at the credits and go like, hey, that's my name. You know, that's pretty fucking cool. And this guy, they shit on everything and then they shit on his name. So for him to just kind of, you know, be like, man, fuck this. I can't blame him. I can't.
And then even more so, I think he was also, and other fans of the comics were also accusing director Josh Boone of whitewashing the characters that he used for the movie.
Yeah, I think the creator even said like that was one of his issues too, because I think the point of the character was that they're supposed to be dark Brazilian.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But Josh Boone said he wanted the character to appear rich, so that's why.
What?
Yeah. I mean, I get to be as charitable as humanly possible. I guess I can get what he's going at, because, like, yeah, in most countries in the world, the lighter skinned you are, you're probably doing better than those around you that are darker skinned. But still, it does just kind of seem like it's kind of when, you know, they want to cast an Asian character, but instead of casting an Asian character, they're like, well, no. Even though it's, you know, everything about it pulls from Asian iconography and stuff like that, it's meant to be everyone inclusive of the world. And we're going to use that as a reason not to hire an Asian. That's been done a couple times.
Which has always been an excuse, let's be real, in this industry. It's always been an excuse not to hire people of color or be inclusive, because the long thought belief in Hollywood was that these people don't watch movies and they don't make money. So why would we hire them to be in our movies? That was the mentality. You know, it's so unreal and maybe kind of encouraging to see how quickly things have changed, because remember, it was only just a few years ago where the controversy of Scarlett Johansson and them using visual effects to make her look more Asian in the movie Ghost in the Shell happened.
Oh boy.
Which sounds so horrific and offensive, and I can't imagine that would even be allowed to happen in this day and age we're in.
No. If anything, you can argue that New Mutants, because it was kicked back so much at the time that it was being made, you know, that probably wouldn't have been that much of an issue. But because it took so goddamn long to come out, now it is. At least it definitely kicks up more dirt. And then, of course, you know, websites love these sort of narratives, like attaching to it and going like, oh, someone's getting canceled. Like, did you see fucking what's her name? Adele? I don't know if she's like in Africa or Jamaica or something, and I guess she's wearing like, I think it's Jamaica, like Jamaican clothing and like a hairstyle.
Oh no.
And of course, you know, like a couple people on Twitter are like, cultural appropriation. So then literally every headline everywhere is like, Adele called out. And it's just like, she wasn't called out. Like, a few people online got mad. But tabloids, the headlines, they need the clicks. They love this kind of shit. And it's the same here with New Mutants. Not to say that in either or there isn't a conversation to be had, but it's like people aren't interested in the conversation. It's just the
it wasn't all. It just also wasn't the whitewashing. Apparently, there was another thing that it just clicked again. But Josh Boone, I felt, or at least I remember him saying that he wanted to make the movie. Well, actually, the film as it is does feature substantial LGBT storyline.
Yeah.
Which is a whole different issue. And I can't help but wonder if Disney perhaps was like, maybe this would be one of the reasons why we can't do Disney Plus, and we can't really promote it all that much.
Well, it sure as hell wasn't in the marketing. Which is so funny because they love marketing, like, first gay character. And it's like one guy winks at another guy for half a second in the background, obscured by light, so you can't really see it. But then with this, where apparently it's like a full-on relationship, it's like, don't talk about it. But yeah, I mean, God, at this point, I feel like I have to watch New Mutants. Like, it's just almost...
Because it's been in the ether for such a long time. So when do you think it'll drop on VOD?
I think it's going to be like a normal film. Like, it'll be 3 months. I don't know.
Well, that was a bunch of drama that happened with New Mutants. And we'll see how it continues to go on. But again, no one's really that crazy about the movie. At most, people were like, I had fun.
Yeah, that's at most. So, yeah.
At most. So that's, I mean, that's what I expected, to be honest.
I really wish they would have gotten to do those reshoots. Because from everything I heard about it, because they first marketed it like a horror film, and I'm like, that first trailer, I'm like, brilliant.
We talked about it that night.
Yeah.
I remember it so vividly when the trailer dropped, and it was so exciting. Remember that?
But apparently it's really not.
No, it was one of those situations where they Suicide Squad it, and they made the movie be something it actually wasn't.
But it's like, I think it's the opposite though. Like, because I think it was after the success of it, that's when they wanted to do the reshoots and make it more, actually make it
Hold on a
horror.
minute, but that's what happened in Suicide Squad. The trailer happened, and then they had a different movie, and they did reshoots on Suicide Squad because that first trailer that was cut, was different than what the movie actually was. Wasn't that the case?
Well, with this, the difference is, I feel like the first trailer marketed it as horror, but the real movie wasn't. I guess it's similar to Suicide Squad. I don't know, but yeah, I wish they really would have gotten around to doing those reshoots, because I feel if they just would have gone full on superhero horror movie, that would have been great. You know, just for the fact that it went there, it would have been like the only film of its kind, a superhero horror film.
Right.
But apparently it's just more like a melodrama teen movie,
If that.
that's just kind of darkish, but not really. And it's like, oh, well, that's fucking lame. It just seems like you couldn't commit to doing one or the other.
I think it got worse reviews. I mean, I think the tomato score was worse for, meaning it got less positive reviews than Dark Phoenix.
Yeah, which is something I also had not watched yet, because
I don't plan on watching that movie.
Logan was it for me, guys.
Yeah,
Logan was the great send off.
Ain't that something?
I don't know if you have this
Yep.
in your news, but I do think it should be talked about. The new trailer that was released
Of
The Haunting of Bly Manor.
I don't think I heard of that happening. Was that yesterday?
Motherfucker.
I was busy yesterday. I didn't hear anything happen.
What do you mean
This is Mike Flanagan's show, right?
Moreno literally shared the trailer, and then I responded like, oh fuck, that's so good. Motherfucker, I don't know how you drop like 20 articles at once and then don't read a single goddamn thing that we send.
That's not necessarily true. The last 48 hours, I have been preoccupied with a project, and I haven't been as active, if you've noticed. So,
Okay. Sure.
Anyway, the trailer.
The Haunting of Bly Manor. It is the second season of The Haunting of Hill House, but, and honestly, this is the best way they could have done this if you were going to do a second season. They're going full anthology, baby. It's like a American Horror Story, except good.
What? So like new location, new cast?
No, new location, same cast. Like I said, American Horror Story. Well, okay. Not in some of the same actors, not all of the same actors.
Gotcha.
Like I think I saw one of the actors, the drug addict brother. Oh no, you didn't see the show, right?
I didn't see
God damn it.
No.
Okay, well. Hey, Halloween is coming up. No, well, I don't know. Well, actually, this does drop in October. Well, the first season is fantastic. It's really good. Then the first is somewhat based on the story, the written story, The Haunting of Hill House, the first season. And the second season, and that's like a very old, famous ghost story. But this season, The Haunting of Bly Manor, is based on another very famous old ghost story. It is called The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. And it starts basically with a caregiver slash what do you call it, nanny, coming to this big giant manor to look over the children of that house, whose parents had died maybe a year ago, and then the uncle took over for caring for them, but the uncle doesn't really give a shit about them, so he has them in this manor, and you go to look after them. But there's rumblings of paranormal activity on the grounds. And then
so Mike Flanagan is on board then?
Yeah. Writing
both seasons? Okay.
Writing, directing, the whole 9 yards.
Look, I see no reason we couldn't add this to our October calendar for keep it here with Red Spotlight and review seasons 1 and 2.
I think it'd be great. If you like Dr. Sleep, which I love Dr. Sleep. You love Dr. Sleep? I think The Haunting of Hill House is better than Dr. Sleep. Like, it's really good. And like once you hit like the 5th and 6th episodes where I think like the first season really peaks, you're just like, oh my gosh, it's so good.
Well, then you know what? We'll go. I'll look into it and see if we can make it happen. But I'm just glad that we can mention Dr. Sleep more because I feel it's so underrated. I was so happy to hear that Alexis loved the film too.
No, Dr. Sleep is really good. He did the impossible with that film. But like, I like this. And then he said, while The Turn of the Screw, Henry James' most famous ghost story when it comes to that, to his own legacy, the writer Henry James, he's saying he's starting there, but he's also going to incorporate a lot of other stories by ghost stories by Henry James. And I think it's going to be similar to what he did with the first season of The Haunting of Hill House, because the first season of Haunting Hill House is very different than the famous book, The Haunting of Hill House. Mike Flanagan very much takes it, remixes it, and does his own thing. And I think that's what he's going to do here with The Haunting of Bly Manor. Take another very famous ghost story, remix it, do his own thing. And again, for a television series, like if you're going to turn this into an anthology, like ghost series, that's a great method by which to do it. So then, like, if you do a season 3, you're gonna go after maybe another famous,
Ghost
story, take it, remix it, make it your own, and yeah. But the trailer was really good. It was really, really good.
Well, you know what? I'm very much
I'm the only one out here supporting my man Flanagan, I guess.
I'm very much intrigued, and I think you may have just paved the way for hunting content on Red Spotlight. So we'll see how that goes. Just to turn the attention back onto the box office in this regarding Tenet. I had shared some comments with you over the weekend from Christopher Nolan that I found, and I think you also found, particularly tone deaf. And I want to take the opportunity to read them right now because, look, this isn't an opportunity here, I feel, to crap on people. If I get the sentiment of wanting to go to the movies, but I also think it's relevant information to realize and recognize who you're supporting when you go out there. And I want to read this in its full context here. He was being asked in an article over the weekend about him and his movie being hailed as the savior of cinema, which is a narrative that Peter and I can't fucking stand. So here is what Nolan said. He says that, quote, "All I can take responsibility for is making the best film that I can." We're already off to the races here.
Oh, boy.
"I think cinema is bigger than any one film, one way or another. And I think people tend to simplify things a bit, particularly in a time like this. I'm just very pleased that the studio feels they can let the film play in places." Let me read that again. "I'm just very pleased that the studio feels that they can let the film play in places where theaters have been able to open. Obviously, that's not the release we imagined when we were making the film, but then the world is not what we had imagined it would be when we made the film. And we had to adapt like everybody else. I'm just very, very pleased that audiences around the world are beginning to be able to respond to the film, because for me as a filmmaker, the film is not finished until the audience gets to see it and tell me what it is that I've done."
Again, it's just, I don't think he's malicious, but it really is just like this inability to see past, because he's still speaking the way you hear directors talk about, their film when there isn't a pandemic, ravaging the world. And it's like, it's this inability to get out of your like cinema bubble and be like, hey, there's bigger things going on right now. Like, what the fuck? And you can tell in the way he talks, like, this, I don't care how good or bad your film is, like, it's not important right now, and no one should be risking their life. Yeah, it's about what I would expect.
I find these comments to be abhorrent because he is addressing the questions as if there's no pandemic, and you almost get the impression that doesn't care. And to me anyway, he kept saying me, tell me what I've done. It just comes across as this guy that needs his ego to be stroked.
Maybe.
I've waited long enough for people to tell me how good my movie is. Damn it. That's how those comments came across.
Honestly, the only thing that might make me believe that is just his films. His films themselves have started to become so self-indulgent that it's like, maybe that reflects where he is as well too in his life right now. I don't know. But Yeah, it to me it mostly just seems like he's stuck in that Hollywood bubble. Like there isn't more important shit going on.
But it also just makes me realize that he is not at all concerned about people who could possibly be sick.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. He's
for seeing his movie.
But I don't think he views it as malicious. But
right.
But I guess at the end of the day, if it has the same outcome, does it really matter? But there are good directors out there that could see beyond that bullshit. I think Scott Derrickson had tweeted out like,
yes. Right.
Don't go to the movies. Like there, I said it. Like, and it's like, yeah, don't go. Like this, movies are not. I don't care what movie it is. It's not worth your life. Like it's not.
And on that note, there was an article that was published this week on Variety regarding Christopher Nolan's fans and why these comments that I just read may be more dangerous in retrospect. That the Variety published this. It was titled, "Will do anything to see Tenet. Meet the fans taking flights for Christopher Nolan's latest."
To be fair, I know because you love sharing that shit, you little bitch. And it did make me angry hearing a lot of shit they said. But just knowing where I am as well emotionally with everything going on, a part of me does feel for them in that this is maybe like a really bright light in their life right now, and they're just like, I gotta go to it. And there is a part of me that just feels for them. It doesn't mean like I don't think it's stupid to do. It's absolutely stupid to do. But there is a piece of me that's like,
I get it, but I also, I get the sentiment. I don't get flying across the country for a movie. I understand the sentiment of, needing something to uplift yourself and doing something for you. I get that. But, what this does get me is more angry at Nolan, because let's be real here. Nolan is in a position unlike any other director in Hollywood, unlike most directors, in that he can influence Warner Brothers. And we've heard reports all throughout this summer that Nolan was pushing and pushing and pushing WB to release the film now, not delay it for a year. And that means he had the influence, and he could have made the decision to delay his film until 2021, and he chose not to. And he is the reason why this is happening. And if anyone who gets sick watching his movie is partly on him.
I will say, I think the responsible thing to do, the best thing I think you could have done in that position, if you really want to give the people something right now, is maybe to push for VOD, like, I think
that gets into the other territory of that's not the way the director intended it to be seen.
Yeah, but then that's where it's like, okay, then go fuck yourself then. But like I think the writers of Bill and Ted, they were like, yeah, like we're really happy that it's available in VOD, that people have.
It is playing in some theaters, from what I read.
Yeah, it's both.
Very limited. Yeah.
But I think it's like, well, for one, there probably are. There has to be some places where there's theaters where it's most likely safe, relatively.
Right.
But the fact that it released both at the same time and just giving people the ability to take in the film, have a little joy, and also not risk their life for it, like that's pretty great, So if you're gonna push for anything, push for that.
Which he didn't.
Oh yeah,
repeatedly.
No, obviously not. Because like I said, I think it's the Hollywood bubble where it's like when
and it even gets
it is cinema. It needs to be in the theater. Like didn't he stop it from being like in drive-ins or some shit?
He stopped it from showing in drive-ins in areas where drive-ins are, but if the indoor theaters are not showing it, the drive-ins themselves can't also show it. He also refused to send out DVD screeners to critics to review the film.
Yeah, it's stupid. it really rubs me the wrong way that they acted with this film, and that's why I'm in no rush to really see Tenet.
I wanted to quote one of the people that they interviewed for this article, Variety, and this was he was asked about the risk or whatever, and this is what he said.
Hold on. What? Go away. Go away. Okay, go.
Okay. I'm not too worried, he shrugs. If I get sick, that's my problem. But I want to make sure I want to make sure I don't get anyone else sick. So I'll be following the precautions. If you listened to last week, the precautions themselves may not be that effective.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's a combination of people crazed Nolan fanatics, people not taking the virus that seriously, and also, and this is where I feel more for them, where it's like people just really, they need something right now, and this was something that they really wanted and needed. And I think it's a combination of those things that leads to quotes like that.
I was reading an article this weekend also about this Canadian movie critic who went to go watch Tenet, and she described her experience. This is the article that ended, Peter, with, was it worth it? I'll tell you in 14 days. That's the one that I sent over to you when she went to go see it. And she was dressed with a N95 face mask, which is the most protective face mask available. And she also had a face shield on most of the time. And she was describing her experience as being more challenging than previously thought. One of the complications she ran into was her face shield fogging up. And yeah, there was another article I read over.
Okay, go ahead.
Another article I read today, in fact, from a different critic in LA, I think he and his friend did one of those private screenings. They basically rented out a whole theater for themselves. I think it was the $99 deal for Tenet, I feel. Mm-hmm. And he begins the article by saying that he walked in and these people were there where they shouldn't have been because it was closed. It was reserved for him, and they were making out. And he had to call in one of the security people to kick him out of there. And he asked if he could if he could have another theater because it didn't seem all that clean after having walked on that, and he was denied that, of course.
Obviously.
So it's just it's a little entertaining, the challenges that people are finding, but to me, it's just more of a reason to not bother. Like, part of the magic of the movies is they're escapist. You get a chance to leave the world behind, and I don't think I'm going to get anywhere close to that with having to be reminded about if someone coughs or my face shield or my glasses fogging up because of my mask. And that was another instance that people were also, I was reading over the weekend, were complaining that people who didn't even have concessions in the theater just took their mask off because they could and no one was guarding them.
Yeah, no one's going to be coming in and no one's going to care. At least the people that work there won't.
But one of the ones that I think is quite scandalous and really shady that I wanted to share was this article from the Playlist by Jason Bailey. And this was titled, "Just How Safe Are NATO?" NATO is the theater NATO, not the international NATO, just to be clear. Cinema safe health and safety protocols. We asked health experts to review the risks. Because this is all vital information for people who actually want to like take this into account and see if they want to go into a movie. Mookie Gradinger, the CEO of Cineworld, said, "Our main message now to our customers is come back to the cinemas that you love because they are safe and they are waiting for you." That's what he said. That did not come off creepy at all. But the part about this that I find quite scandalous is AMC. And this was discussed in this article. That on AMC's website, this is what they say in regards to the new HVAC ventilators that supposedly are being installed to circulate air where there currently doesn't exist at the moment. And this is what it says on AMC's website. For superior air quality, we've upgraded our HVAC systems with MERV 13 filters wherever possible.
Wherever possible.
Wherever possible.
It's the loophole of...
So this reporter, Jason Bailey, actually, he said that he kind of detailed his thoughts on it, but they also had this forum where he was able to submit a question in which the CEOs of these theater chains would be asked. And it was interesting how the way that he wrote the question and then how it was asked of CEO Adam Aron of AMC. So I'm going to detail what the article said here. It's not a question AMC wants to answer. AMC has said they will use MERV 13 air ventilation filters wherever, whenever they can. Do they have more concrete numbers about how many of their theaters will use these filters? So he asked that question basically. Do they have more concrete numbers about how many of their theaters will have these filters? And then he points out that, however, this question was modified by the moderator when they asked AMC CEO Adam Aron. And they changed that question to, this is how it was read aloud. I know the issue of air filtration is an important one. You guys have taken a look at it. What are the various ways and options you're addressing that question? That, and this is not AMC. This is somebody from, I think, the conference that intervened and changed that question. So
oh, okay.
And this is how it was asked of AMC, Adam Aron, and it doesn't actually reveal what he answered, but it says that AMC CEO was thus allowed to explain why they were doing what they were doing in impressive sounding yet vague language. So the reporter sent 2 follow-up emails to the AMC public relations contact, again asking for concrete numbers regarding these filters, the implementation, and if there is any way for moviegoers to know if they're in use in the theaters they're attending. To date, they have not responded. We will update this article if they do.
They're not going to. I mean, that's standard, political corporate bullshit. Where it's like, we will implement these things where we can. So that gives you the loophole to basically not even implement it anywhere if you want, especially if maybe you put it in like one place and then nowhere else, and you can still, that statement still rings true technically. So yeah, again, like this all goes back to the point of there's really, even with all these precautions, I wouldn't say that there's a way for the vast majority of theater experiences in the United States to be safe. I think most doctors agree with that, so.
Even in the best of circumstances. But the point here is they're not giving it their best of circumstances. They're not going to go that far. They're lying to you. And I want people to hear this and know this. That way they understand that, oh, I feel so safe with the illusion of it. You're not. Even in the best of circumstances, but they're lying to you guys. They're tricking you. Don't put yourselves in dangers. Don't trust Nolan. Don't trust AMC. Their actions are going to cause you to get sick. I just don't know how clear it has to get. I guess we'll know in a month how bad this will get. Anyway, Mulan. So Peter and I are arranging a little shindig for him and I and Kyle. I had to correct Kyle because earlier today on the Fantasy Fair, he alluded to a party and I had to correct him. Do not say we're having a party. It's not a fucking party. It is a socially distanced 3-person private screening outdoor. Don't get people thinking, because I don't want to look like a fucking hypocrite here. We're not going to go to a movie theater. We're having our own arrangement. Peter is providing the cinema. I'm providing the venue. Kyle's providing the food. And it'll all be a mask zone, socially distanced. There is a risk, but relatively low risk considering how all of us, we all know each other's schedules and our habits at this point. We all take very good care of each other. The option gives us a little bit of a break, and we're going to be watching Mulan. Maybe we'll also watch Bill and Ted considering the timing, but that is much preferable than going and driving an hour to Arizona and risking that situation. Although they claim, Harkins Theaters in Arizona claims that they have that new ventilation system in all their theaters. But why you would trust that, I don't know.
It's just being around people you don't know in public places. Not the greatest right now.
Especially since now, I don't know if, and I think we've addressed this, but in recent weeks, it's come to light that, oh no, it is airborne, meaning that the droplets in the air stay in that space. And so far as you getting infected off of that, more likely than it being on surfaces.
Yeah, it is able to stay in the air for a while. Yeah, that's why masks are really important.
Yeah. So how do you feel Mulan's gonna do? Is there any way to predict how this is gonna happen?
No, not for me anyway. I have no fucking idea. I really do.
It can be anywhere from a massive success, it can crater, or it can be middling.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the reality. Because no one's ever tried this method, because it's not even purchase on VOD, it's $30 purchase on a streaming service. That's just not something that's ever been done before.
Yeah.
I will say Mulan has got good reviews so far.
Yeah.
So that might help it in the long run.
I'm looking forward to the film itself. This is actually the first time in a long time I'm looking forward to a Disney live-action remake, which historically on this network we have trashed.
Yeah, I definitely have. And this is honestly the first one I've looked forward to too, because it does seem well made, and story seems like it's not shot for shot. It looks like it's doing some new interesting stuff, and yeah, good reviews, so I'm excited. But as far as how much it'll make, no fucking clue.
How much do you think it'll factor in? So it's being reported in the trades that December is when Disney is going to make Mulan available to all Disney Plus subscribers and not have to pay the $29.99. How much do you think that's going to factor in?
I have no idea. It could factor in a bit, especially with the $30 and you already have Disney Plus. Fuck it. I'm sure there'll be a lot of people to say fuck it, I'll wait. But like I said, because all of it's so new. I just don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. That's all I got for this show. I just want to, end with just to say on the record. I love movies. I love the movie going experience, and I don't mean to be mean-spirited to people, because Peter pointed out about people wanting to have something to hold on to and to keep themselves going. I can certainly appreciate that, and I don't want this to be misrepresented. I want the movie theater going experience to survive. Same as Peter. It's part of our lives. I sorely miss it, which is kind of in part why we feel that it's about time we did something for us this weekend. But I also, think that a lot of people, a lot of influential people in this industry, to say nothing, of course, of Washington or the news media, but in terms of Hollywood, I think a lot of these figures are being highly irresponsible in putting people in needless danger. And it's not, I think, unrealistic to expect that in this time where this virus cannot be controlled by the current leadership, won't then turn into more cases of coronavirus and then more deaths. We're at 184,000 people dead in this country. We're weeks away from hitting 200,000. We could hit as many as 300,000 by the end of the year. I appreciate very much the pain that is going all over this country right now, especially when it comes to people who are losing their jobs and who are losing their businesses. And me wanting things to stay closed is not the same as wanting to see entrepreneurs and business owners fail. The government, this country, has failed you repeatedly for many, many years, and perhaps not more so than right now in 2020. And it's quite demoralizing to me that people can't put two and two together, and they're taking out all their frustration on their fellow Americans. They're taking out their frustration on their local government, on their state government. But the anger, quite frankly, and the blame needs to be placed on federal government, on this do-nothing Congress, on the inability of Washington to function, of the failure of this presidency. That's why everything sucks right now. To be quite clear with you, things sucked beforehand. But I think what I want to advocate is for people to stop looking at things as if they're not connected to each other. Everything that we talk about on this show, when it comes from politics to movies, it's all interlinked. One affects the other. And I just wish that people wouldn't be so afraid to just wade into those waters and point out the connections. I'm hopeful that we can overcome. But as I said last week, I am scared about what is to come in the remainder of this year. And my wish is for people to remain safe, and my wish is for people to take this into account. And do not trust entities and individuals who have a shady background of lying to you in the past. Everyone's their own person. Everyone makes their own choice. But I don't feel everyone makes those choices with the information they need to make that happen. And this is why this continues to ferment for months on end. And I just don't want to be misrepresented as somebody who is rooting for movie theaters to go down or for people's businesses to go down. Any last words, Peter, before we close today?
You said it.
All right. Thank you all for listening. We have an upcoming series on the Legend of Korra. That's going to be very exciting for all of us because this may be one of the more confrontational series we've had. We've had a variety of different opinions on this series, and I can't wait for you guys to hear it. I can't wait to actually sit down and record this. This should be a much more hopefully, livening discussion instead of the death and decay that we discuss on these news shows on a daily basis, but that is life, isn't it? We have special Halloween horror-themed stuff coming up, not just on Red Spotlight, but also with To the Table and Fantasy Fair. Stay tuned. Thank you all for staying with us. Keep it here under our big Red Spotlight, and until next time, bye-bye.